We will continue with the presentation of Vladimir Arsenijević. He's working on a topic during his fellowship this year, which is called Down Njegoševa Street. I am Hedvig Morvai. I mean, most of you, of course, know me. And just to say that I'm not moderating this session because I'm working for the Erste Foundation, but I'm moderating this session because I am actually coming from Serbia. I am coming from the region, and my, so to say, real identity is in the region of the Balkans. I am one of the colleague activists of Vladimir and many others who are working on topics such as what we will be discussing here today. The other panelists are Ivana Dragičević and Zoran Nechev. Ivana Dragičević is an award-winning journalist and editor-at-large at the N1 television, which is the CNN affiliate for Southeastern Europe. And Zoran Nechev is coming from Skopje. He is working for a think tank, the Institute for Democracy Societas Civilis, which is focusing on EU enlargement and the Europeanization of Macedonia and of the region of the Western Balkans. Vladimir Arsenijević is a prolific writer and cultural worker, and you can read his CV in this, also in the publication, which has been prepared for this symposium. He has published 12 works, mainly novels, but also collections of stories, essays, and graphic novels. He has also written for film and theater, as well as for various daily newspapers, magazines, and internet portals. He's running an organization which is called Crocodile in Belgrade, which is actually a festival, a poetry festival. He's very active in connecting people from all over the region. He is a person who sits in his car and he's driving to Ukraine to deliver humanitarian aid to those in need there. He's someone who is going around with his colleagues Belgrade and trying to remove some of the very toxic murals and graffitis he will be talking about here today. What we want to discuss is basically how the influence of the state on the steady rise of the culture of violence is shaping these societies. What is the future for our kids who are raised in these societies? And there is something else what connects us at this panel, I believe, is that we all have kids who are growing up in these societies, in these countries. My very personal reason for leaving Serbia 6 years ago was my son, who was then 5 years old, and I didn't want him to stay there and to start going to school there. And I wanted simply to remove him from that toxic environment, what Vladimir is going to describe here today. So, Vladimir, you will be the first one who will, of course, present his work. You also prepared for us some visuals.
Yep.
And I believe that is going to give us a very good insight and idea about what you are working on and what you discovered.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'll stand up like Eva yesterday and kind of do my presentation standing, and then I'll join, other distinguished members of this panel in whatever happens after I speak. So, hi, my name is Vladimir Arsenijević, and as Hedvig has said, I'm a writer, but I'm also president of this association called Crocodile. We did start as a literary festival. Actually, it's more like a prose festival, and Crocodile is an abbreviation, actually, KROK. We stand in Serbian for Literary Regional Gathering which alleviates boredom and lethargy. And that referred to, state of things that had after the wars in the 1990s, when the country included and fell apart, have been formed, and some form of reconciliation and new communication was needed. So this is why we started the festival to create a platform for the writers from all these different countries to be able to meet and read to each other and also to the audience. However, we are not a purely literary festival. I don't really see these dividing lines between the cultural activism and the socio-political activism. And as the situation in the country is becoming by day darker and more dramatic, we are leaning more and more towards the socio-political activities and also direct activism. I know it's really fashionable now to say, I mean, many organizations in Europe would say, well, we are not a think tank, we are a do tank. But we really are a do tank, and to be a do tank, you really need to roll up your sleeves and really go down and do the dirty work. So after Katie's brilliant presentation of, our utopian/dystopian AI future and whatever is in hold for us, in the times to come, I'm going to give you like this little bit of a lowdown and dirty of this graffiti war in the Belgrade streets, and particularly in Njegoševa street in the central Belgrade municipality of Vračar. When I was offered to join the fellowship of Europe's Futures, I immediately proposed to actually analyze the very graphic far-right content that satirized basically and polluted Njegoševa street ever since 2021. So thinking back, it's a relatively new process. In the past 3 years, we have seen many different murals. This is probably a central one that depicts the war criminal Ratko Mladić, who was accused for the genocide in Srebrenica. And behind him, and this is very important for the understanding of the mechanisms of how these things happen, is the coat of arms, I would say, that says Partizan, which is actually the Partizan football club, one of the two main soccer clubs in Belgrade, Partizan and Crvena Zvezda, and the main perpetrators of these murals, stencils, and graffiti are actually teenage football hooligans and street thugs, but in a way they're only kind of a heightened hand of the regime and the state, and there is a clear line that I will try to show here that goes from the depths of the society all the way up to basically the president of the country. So why Njegoševa street? And so this is Njegoševa. It's a relatively quiet, pretty walkable street lined with linden trees in central Belgrade, in the central municipality of Vračar in Belgrade. Vračar also happens to be not only the most central municipality in Belgrade, but also the smallest municipality. And it seems to be, how do you say it, like a chip on the shoulder, or I don't quite know the English expression, to the far right, because of its apparent lack of ability to sort of accept the concepts, the chthonic concepts of, the traditions and soil and blood and bones. It seems to be kind of fairly airy and light, non-ethnic, non-national. Life there kind of goes on in a very European sort of way. And I imagine that this is the reason why it became a target and the focus and even the obsession of the far-right groups. And it was even reflected in the words of Miša Vacić, who is the leader of the Srpska desnica, Serbian right, political party and the movement, who said once that Vračar needs to be Serbianized. And how do you Serbianize certain parts of the city is clearly seen in what was going on in Vračar. So by the time that I was offered the fellowship in Europe's Future, the whole Njegoševa street was satirized with the images of glorified war criminals, with warmongering messages of remilitarization of Kosovo, again, like anti-vax messages, pro-Cyrillic, which doesn't seem to have anything negative to it, but there is a dividing line in a country where both alphabets are used, where the Cyrillics are most used by the nationalistic-minded part of the population, whereas the Roman letters might be used by this other part of the population, and similar content. And that was when? That was beginning of 2023. And so it all kind of exploded in the most horrific way on May 3rd, 2023, when a 13-year-old boy who was going to the school, which is exactly here, entered the school building with 2 semi-automatic weapons and a couple of Molotov cocktails in his backpack, and started shooting and murdering the school guard and 2 young girls that were on duty at the entrance of the school, and then entering the history class of his class, and in a matter of minutes murdering another seven peers, seven students. And this is obviously the blurred image of a boy, and these are the victims. And this completely shocked the whole society. It was just something unimaginable for Serbia. Despite everything that was going on in the country throughout the 1990s with the wars, and the fact that we've learned that after United States and Yemen, Serbia seems to have the biggest number of firearms per person, per an inhabitant in the world. But somehow these things did not happen before. School violence tended to be individual. There is a lot of peer violence, unfortunately, but not on this scale. This is the boy, Kosta Kecmanović, as he was when he gave himself up to the police. He cannot even be criminally persecuted because he was less than 13 years old in that time, and he managed to break this, unfortunately, really dark record. He was the youngest murderer who killed so many victims ever that we know. He's currently in the mental hospital for kids and teenagers. Parents have been arrested, and this thing shocked the society so much that only the day after, on May 4th, another murder has happened in 2 villages close to Belgrade, where another 9 young people ranging from 14 years old to 21 years old were murdered, and this completely was overshadowed by the first murder. Another weird coincidence that happened was that on May 3rd, in the New York Times, this article was published. And it's called "The President, the Soccer Hooligans, and an Underworld House of Horrors." And this is an article that actually exposes the connection of President Vučić, pictured here, and the so-called Vračar clan, or Belivuk clan, which is a mafia group organized around central Belgrade with deep ties with the Partizan football club and the Grobari Ultras, the football hooligans group belonging to Partizan football club. And what is by far the most morbid thing is something that I will start discussing my presentation with. However, the shock that it left the society with is really something that cannot be explained, and it all turned into these massive demonstrations, which were called Serbia Against Violence. And you can see that the rivers of people were gathering in the central streets of central Belgrade and walking quietly, and many of these people were passing by the school, and there was a lot of, you can just imagine, a lot of flowers, a lot of candles, teddy bears, baby dolls, different messages directed to the children that were the victims of these very horrific crimes, and everybody was looking for a suitable culprit. And what it all boiled down to, much to my surprise, is that it's the reality TV shows that we have to play. And obviously, I'm not even going to try to abolish reality TV shows which perpetrate violence and combine it with this sensationalistic need to have continuous excitement and fun. But the problem seemed much deeper to me, and also much more visible as well. And I will show you now the picture of the facade of the primary school, where actually the boy armed with weapons entered the primary school and started shooting. And this is it. You might not be able to read Cyrillic writings, but it says Grobari Vračar. So the Undertakers, Vračar, which is the local group of football hooligans. This is the actual facade of the school. Here is the entrance. I mean, days after the shooting, people were lining up, there were cameras. I mean, this was being discussed all over the place in the media, and nobody even noticed this. And I found it absolutely shocking. I mean, disregarding everything that these words actually stand for, just to have a word, Undertakers, written on the facade of the primary school should not last for 5 minutes. To me, in normal society, somebody would go out of the school and erase it immediately. However, it stood there for months on end, and there was no clear connection between this and what has happened in the school, and let alone the vicinity of the school. And this is what I'm actually going to talk about. So it was only after we from Association Crocodile went there and finally just use a little bit of red paint and 5 minutes of our time, and this was gone. And then I understood that the society has been numbed with these messages. It has been conditioned. It has been learned to accept these things without questioning them further. And this is the state of things in which we live even now. And I'm afraid that the Serbian society has not looked through this facade that has been actually produced and constructed by the political authorities in order for them to be more easily manipulated for the political goals. So I'll just do this relatively short, I have to say, and give you a little insight into maybe 3 most prominent murals and graffiti in either Njegoševa or very close to Njegoševa street, not necessarily in chronological order. This is across the road from school, so what we have seen now is just across the road here. And this was actually, the picture was taken by our friend. And what has happened is really an interesting line of events. My wife was walking our dog. We run Association Crocodile together and are invested and engaged in self-same things. And she saw a group of teenagers. And I imagine this is a very international look with like black hoods and camouflage gear and like modern sneakers and things like that, drawing what was immediately recognizable as the face of Vladimir Putin. This was soon after the Russian aggression against Ukraine has started in spring of 2022. And she approached and she said, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we are drawing the face of Vladimir Putin." And she said, "But you can't do that. This is a residential building. Please move away." And they were kind of okay. They didn't say anything bad to her, but they refused to go away. And she said, "Well, I'm going to call the police." And she did call the police. And then she left. And a friend of ours happened to pass by, and he saw the moment when the police arrived. And what happened? Police talked to these kids, and then just stood there, and then just left in the car. And the kids continued to do whatever they were doing. And this was the result. The image of Putin with intertwined Serbian and Russian flags, and the word, again in Cyrillic writings, in a very, very, I would say, kind of old church style Cyrillics, It says brat, meaning brother. There is a Freudian slip there that was used by the people who kept defacing this mural in a very, very interesting and funny way. And the defacing happened immediately. So I'll show you the evolution of this mural through time. Here, I don't quite understand this, but somebody wrote murderer. And then the red children's hands, yeah. So you just erase B and you get rat, meaning war. So that was quite clever. There was another clever intervention, which I will show you later on. I don't think that you will be able to. So again, somebody drew a mustache. I'm against kind of funnyization, I don't know how to call it, of these things. I don't think there's anything funny in it, but I do understand the attempts. I mean, you need to do something very quickly because there is the whole society might be against you. So people are doing whatever they can in the moment, like, you know, black glasses. And again, you can see that this has been reconstructed and then deconstructed again. So from brother into war. And you see Putin kind of starting slightly melting away. This is a funny consequence of this. Again, you know, you see Slava Russi or like long live Mother Russia and Father Putin, come on now. But then, you know, and here, I think this kind of slightly resembles Hitler's mustache, right? Down there. And then here. So the reason why the inscriptions are in Russia is because many Russian actually nationals who came to Belgrade after the beginning of the war were engaged in this kind of fight. Disregarding, you know, everything that you can say about Russia, and Kadri was talking a lot in a very vivid way about this passivization of Russian society, but this is not what we have experienced in Belgrade. I think probably because the people who left Russia then were already, you know, had this political framework which set them apart from the rest of the society. They did not want to be there. Obviously, out of 200,000 people that came to Belgrade, around, I think, 40 or 50,000 actually stayed. Many of them had business reasons to leave Russia, and they only moved to Serbia because it was one of the few countries that they could actually settle in. But on the fringes of that community, there was a lot of political anti-war activism. And actually I could claim, and this is to my shame as a Serbian citizen, that there would be no anti-war activities if there wasn't for the Russian immigrants in Serbia. So this was obviously a matter of personal thing to the Russians in Serbia, and they were really shocked to discover that Serbians have created this, you know, kind of imaginary being. I mean, the Putin that they believe in Serbia and the Russia that they hold so dear have nothing to do with the realities of that man or that country either. And that has a long history that I won't go into, but like how do you say, Njet vojna or something like that, this is not Serbian, this is Russian, no to the war. And then again, B was erased. Little heart was drawn here, which I didn't notice up until now, actually. And here it says hulja, which means bastard, right? And again. And now you see the face, yeah, sort of slightly, slowly melting. I mean, you can only reconstruct him so many times, and then, you know, it doesn't work anymore. So it's getting even worse, like sranje, shit. So you can tell that there is this friction in the society, that clearly there are two groups that are trying to communicate on the walls of Belgrade. And it might even be funny, even though it's not. It's absolutely horrifyingly tragic. And the fact that you have to again remember that the boy who murdered his counterparts, his school friends, have been walking by throughout this, day in, day out. And if this was the only mural available, you know, in the vicinity, it would be enough to make this change in, you know, the structure of how these kids think. Unfortunately, it's not, and we'll get to there as well. So Putin is not even Putin anymore. It's he's turned to something. And what is appearing here is the colors of the Russian anti-war movement, which is the Russian flag without a red field, as they translate it, Russia without blood. I mean, and he's gone. And no more Putin. And this is how it is today. This is another one. The Putin is just over there. So you don't imagine that it's very, very far away. It's very, very close. This is, I mean, we understood that we can't be impersonal about these things. This is the park, this is my dog. This is Laura. And this is one of the parks where we take our daughter to play. This building there is the Institute for Metallurgy, Chemistry, and something else. For years on end, this side facade was adorned with this graffiti gem that was actually produced by different graffiti artists, because Belgrade is a very graffiti, mural, street art kind of city, and there's plenty of good content beside that right-wing activity. And it's an ecological mural that shows like the tree of life and whatnot. But then the bottom part was painted with message produced on the background again of Serbian color. What you see in the middle is, I assume, medieval Serbian mythical hero Miloš Obilić, who was the murderer of Sultan at the Kosovo field, and the inscription says "Kad se vojska na Kosovo vrati," when the army returns to Kosovo. And it's a military warmongering message that implies that Serbian army is going to reoccupy Kosovo, which has been the southernmost Serbian autonomous province, that it was called in the times of socialist Yugoslavia, and now is an independent state, Republic of Kosovo. This was also vandalized several times, like this, and I have to say it was done by us again. So I unfortunately didn't find this one image that shows the kind of the relative numbers of one side and another, where one of these graffiti in another part of Belgrade was painted white by us, and there was only 3 people doing that, and then it was reconstructed by these football hooligans, and they took picture of them, and there was around 70 of them over there. So it's a very unequal sort of fight. This is another one that appeared after the building has been renovated, and you see that the actual mural that depicting the tree of life was gone. The wall was white and nice, maybe for 2 days, and then again this graffiti appeared on the wall. And this is when we decided to act, and we invited neighbors and the people to civic action, citizen action, to clean up the park. It's a park in central Belgrade, and to also remove this illegally produced nationalistic graffiti from the wall of the institute. We did it together with the Youth Initiative for Human Rights, which is a youth organization that's fighting nationalism and chauvinism and different things like that. And so we placed these invitations for the citizens in different buildings. And then one Saturday at 11, we gathered in the park and cleaned the park and started removing this graffiti from the wall. And immediately, I mean, in a matter of minutes, we were surrounded by both the police and the communal militia, which is the light blue guy in the corner. There was about 30 of them asking us to stop painting the wall immediately. And we refused, and it was really funny. This is Milana, my wife. This is the colleague from Crocodile, and you know the policeman, she was just numbing them with constant talk. She just talked them into passivity, and they just stood there and listened to her while we continued to paint the wall. And it takes some time. It's like 30 meters long, but you can do things to police. It's no problem. And we also placed this sign in the park. We renamed it. It's called unofficially Mitićeva Rupa. We renamed park Dušana Jovanovića, and Dušan Jovanović was a Roma kid from the neighborhood who was killed by a couple of skinheads, and that remained it's still famous case. So we decided to symbolically give the park a name of Dušan Jovanović, and this is how the wall looked like immediately after we repainted it. His color of the skin. This park bears the name, bears Dušan's name in remembrance of his tragic fate, and a reminder that the fight against racism, hatred, and violence never stops. Immediately, I mean, very day, again, the wall was scribbled with these ridiculous things. It says, "Death to traitors." Domestic traitors, I'm sorry. All traitors are domestic traitors, come on now. Yeah. But to me, this image is really interesting, because you see people just walking by, not really reacting, not seemingly, not caring at all. And I oftentimes give the example of my father-in-law, and he's a nice guy. I think I did it in Belfast as well. I caught him reading Informer, which is like the worst possible tabloid, like really toxic tabloid. And then I said to him, "Why are you reading this crap?" And he said, "Well, because it's 40 dinars, because all other newspaper would be like 100 dinars. And then I understood how it functions. Why are people actually buying that shit? Because they can actually, this is one thing that they can actually afford. And then on the way here, because he's now in Rijeka, and on the way here I came with him. He's such a nice guy. And then we talked about that crap, because on the way towards the airport of Belgrade now, I mean, you get completely poisoned by, like there was recently a visit of Chinese president in Belgrade, there are like Chinese flags, then there's like this billboard with, again, intertwined Russian and Serbian flag, then because of the UN resolution regarding the genocide in Serbia, there's this billboard saying Serbs are not genocide, or anything like that. And you're like, oh, I just need to get away from here. I mean, and so when you get to the point when there's actually countryside around you, you're like, oh. And then I'm saying, like, it's so hard for me to go to that. And he said, and that's a very typical Serbian reaction. He said, oh, I don't even notice that. So imagine that they might be like in like 36 in Berlin and like, you know, surrounded with swastikas, and they say, yeah, but they don't notice that. And so it's this kind of coping mechanism, I would say, that actually people are using, but they can't face what's going on around them. This is the wall now. We really managed to fight it off, but the price was really dear. Okay, I'll just name, because this is the Institute for, again, chemistry, metallurgy, and another thing. I can't seem to remember the three things. I could look it up, but, you know. So these are the famous Serbian chemists, metallurgists, and the third thing. I'm sorry. It's not quite to our liking, but we had to make do with the people from the Institute, and this is how it came to be. We were hoping to have, because we have these initiatives, like one is called Free the Streets, Free the People. It's directly the initiative regarding the state of our world, where we organize activists to erase hateful content from the walls, and also engage muralists to paint gentle. on our walls. And when they asked us, so what should we paint? We say anything as long as it's gentle. Because we believe that the soft power in this kind of rough, very toxic environment is actually what really, really does it. So here, okay, people from the Institute had their say, and I think it's professionally done, but content, whatever. But what happened to us is a different story altogether. Immediately on that day, we started receiving threats over social networks, you can imagine, because there's a lot of women in our organization. There was a lot of sexual innuendo, threats of gang rape, and all kinds of morbid stuff that you can possibly imagine. We reported it all to the specific sectors of the police. They were relatively nice to us and filed it all in, and nothing ever happened. Even though you can really tell apart easily the bots and the fake accounts from the actual accounts. So when you see a guy on their profile picture with a 3-year-old daughter writing to you how they're going, excuse me, fuck you in the ass, or, you know, like slash your throat or something like that, it sort of makes you wonder about human nature generally, but some people just hook up with that and think it's their duty to. So you can imagine that in the medieval times, they'll be dancing around the bonfires and you know, so it's just a modern version of that. After that, we ended up with altogether 32 misdemeanor charges for absolutely ridiculous stuff. We applied white paint on the white wall and erased illegally produced graffiti, disregarding the content. And one of the misdemeanor charges is that, and I'm quoting, by applying white paint to the white wall, we ruined the original look of the building. So how is that possible? Another one was the misdemeanor charge for rude and reckless behavior. I could tell you anything about us, but we're not rude and reckless. We were complying. I mean, they would come to us, they would say, can I see your ID? And we say, of course you can, please. And so there was no rude or reckless behavior. So these all amount to slap suits. Because what happens to us afterwards is that every week, ever since, and it has only been a year now, we spend in the court, waiting in these corridors for hours on end. We spend quite a lot of money on the lawyer and, you know, trying to organize our defense. And the tactics of it, because Serbia is really not Russia, so you don't disappear for like 20-something years, somewhere thousands of kilometers away, somewhere in Siberia. These are all just very simple financial fines, non-dramatic. They would say to you, and this is a modern day in Serbia for you, so your fine is 10,000 dinars, but if you pay in a month, you get 50% discount, which I thought was absolutely fantastic, but we decided not to pay, because by paying, you prove that you're complicit. So this is how the fight still goes on. And the retaliation of the far-right group was in producing, we counted 56 altogether, large-size murals with the same message all over Belgrade and Serbia. So they started to appear all over the place. And there was no police, nobody was fined, nobody was ever threatened for doing that or anything at all. So clearly you see where the government stands in regard of these activities. This is even in St. Petersburg, Russia, for the reasons that completely escape me, but it's there. And I'll finish with this one. This is probably the focal point of all the far-right activity in Njegoševa street. This is the portrait of a war criminal. To my eyes, you know, this is how the villain looks like. This is how the war criminal actually looks like. This is General Mladić of Republika Srpska. He was very instrumental as the military leader of Serbian military in the Bosnian War for committing genocide in Srebrenica, where 8,000 people perished in 2 days. He was arrested by the Serbian state after the end of the wars and taken to The Hague and Scheveningen, and then was trialed and convicted to life sentence for the genocide in Srebrenica and other war crimes committed around Bosnia and Herzegovina during the war years. The reason why this, and this is the oldest of the three murals that I've shown, the reason why it was produced in July 2021 was after his verdict was confirmed again in June of that year. And again, the same process was happening immediately. So you can see the mural changing. It was defaced by the democratically minded part of our society, and then it developed. So I showed you at the beginning the partisan coat of arms, and again the inscription that said, "General, thanks to your mother," or something like that. And so, Youth Initiative for Human Rights decided to erase this mural, and on November 9th of 2021, which is the day, International Day of Fight Against Fascism, they organized the public gathering in front of the mural, which was banned by the police. Several people came, I was there as well, and the person that you see here being roughed up is Aida Čorović, who is a political activist from Belgrade, who actually, together with Jelena Jachimović, another activist, threw an egg onto the portrait of General Mladić in a highly symbolic act, which actually for people in Belgrade is very reminiscent of what was going on in the anti-government protests in 96, 97, when an egg and a whistle were the primary weapons, I would say, of these people, sort of symbolically showing that all the weapons in that fight are completely symbolic. What happens when you crack an egg against the wall is actually nothing. The egg just slides down, and there's not even a trace. She was immediately arrested by these men who never identified themselves. Later on, it appeared that they were actually members of the police force, and she was taken away in this unmarked van. She was actually taken to the police station. She was treated relatively okay in the police station and let go 2 hours afterwards. So she reappeared together with quite a large group of demonstrators in front of the mural already that evening. And then the fight started. This was done by us. Again, we had the attitude that these things do not deserve aesthetics, that you should really just destroy them and nothing else. So this is done many times. Here you see the actual, again, football hooligans who produced the graffiti, who are taking away the paint that was being thrown on it. They use state-of-the-art equipment, and they have that coat of lac, I don't know how you call it, varnish, that they paint over the graffiti. So they just use really cloth and water and just paint it over like glass. So it was very easy for them to put it back into the original state. But still, you know, this continued. This is something that I'll just stop over. If you notice the suprematist symbols of a square and circle and the cross, then the red heart, this was also done by us. This is just to see the larger picture. It's not really only about the portrait of Mladic. This here is the portrait of Mihailović, who was the leader of the Chetnik movement in the Second World War, which was a royalist guerrilla. He was sued and tried for war crimes after the Second World War and sentenced to death. So he's hailed as a hero of this group. So we came up with this action. We printed these stickers, Kazimir Maljević, the Ukrainian Soviet avant-garde artist, and this writing saying anti-miserabilistic avant-garde interventionism. And as these right-wing groups again retaliated with these stencils of Ratko Mladic, they started appearing virtually everywhere. On the walls of Belgrade and other cities, we actually superimposed these very powerful, very simple suprematist images over them with the sticker, with the signature of Kazimir Maljević.
Vladimir, are there still some images you want to show? We can stop here now and.
This is it. I just want to say one thing and to finish. Recently, Aida Čorović, who was proved guilty by the court for defacing the wall of the building in Njegoševa street and refused to pay the fine of 100,000 dinars, was supposed to be taken to the prison oops, sorry. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, I'll get it. Yeah. And we organized collection of money from the citizens to pay for her release from the prison. 100,000 dinars is really not that much. It's around 800 euros. But what really surprised us is that in a matter of 2 days, we collected altogether 800,000 dinars from the people. So we understood that there is a lot of will of the people to participate in this kind of engaging, fight against the state and its repression mechanisms. And this is how we came up with this slapback fund. It was really like an ad hoc activity. We ended up with 700,000 dinars, and being that we know that there are many cases which are maybe not as visible as the case of Aida Čorović, because there's a lot of activists on the, in small places, people who remain invisible to the public eye. So the purpose of this fund is to be able to help these people and to organize legal defense for them and things like that. And I just wanted to say that nothing happened. We still live in the same kind of thing. Recently, there was voting in UN General Assembly regarding the resolution on genocide, and it was voted yes. 84 countries were in favor. 19 were against, and abstention was significant with 68 countries, and it has to do with, general geopolitical situation. But, can it be more pathetic than this, really? This is our president in the UN General Assembly, wrapped in Serbian flag with this really pathetic look on his face. Look at that. And I mean, look at this loneliness. I mean, come on. Go and die. So again, and this really hit me as very vicious. So this is just recently now in Serbia. This is regarding the genocide in Serbia. The denial is so strong that they can't even face the fact. I mean, come on, 30 years later, that yes, something has been done. They seem to be counting these victims. So genocide starts from this certain number, so everything lower than that number is not a crime. So we said, yeah, I mean, you can't even, so we are not a genocidal nation. We remember.
Not nation,
people. We remember. Now, yeah, proud Serbia is Srpska, meaning the Serbia, and Srpska, which is the Serbian part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. But I mean, one has to ask, what do you remember? What do you even mean by remembering? But look at this. On May 3rd, there was a year after the school massacre. It was an anniversary, and it was really well organized by several historians, children's writers, and people who were very friendly to us. And this was the slogan, we remember. And it's very suitable for what has happened in the primary school. It's absolutely not suitable, not suitable for what has happened in Srebrenica and our position regarding that. And it seems to just be snatched away from here. And so
Vladimir, let's finish then with this image now.
I'm finishing. So no, I want to show you this. So okay, this is Serbia practically today. Russian and Serbian flag, Putin being sold as a souvenir in central Belgrade streets. This was how Chinese delegation was welcome to Serbia. Look at that. And obviously very anti-NATO, very anti-EU, and here is the man. Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And all
now
this
I'm not going
producing...
to let me remove him. Oh my God, he's stuck.
He got stuck.
There you go.
See, he's watching over us now.
Yeah. No, literally he's stuck. Oh my God.
Okay. And all this created an atmosphere where if you just look at the news, what came, during last week, I mean, just before we arrived here, Vuk Cvić, the brother of Srđan Cvić, our fellow, was attacked in the very center of Belgrade by a colleague, journalist colleague of his. He was seriously injured. 2 days prior to that, a man was beaten up by, again, a very young group of hooligans, actually in front of his building, because these hooligans were coming to the park, coming to the building day after day, and they were terrorizing the kids who were playing there and also the inhabitants of this building, and he dared to step out and ask them to leave, and actually he died after his injuries. So this is the situation, and this is what I'm very grateful that you kind of had this broad overview of these different dimensions, and one is promoting war criminals, and others is promoting the hooligans, the third is promoting this cooperation with the countries as China and Russia. And it's great that you showed actually what is going on around school buildings like this one, the tragic school building where this terrible atrocity happened exactly a year ago. So I mentioned we all have kids on this panel. Ivana Dragičević was during her fellowship dealing with a project. And she asked the question, who is the future? She was talking to young people from all over Europe. And she was also reflecting on in what kind of an atmosphere these kids are raised, how they grew up, and then how do they see the future, and how do they look at their societies and their opportunities. And actually, how are they going to vote on, first of all, this next election, the European election, but also on their local elections. So, Ivana, I believe that you got a lot of material to have a reflection.
Thank you so much, Vlado, because I really think it's needed to have different kind of perspectives and different kind of people as Europe's futures. And I would connect what you just presented with what Katie was talking about, because it has very strong connection. And that is, as she talked about, that AI or whatever is happening is creating numbness and thoughtlessness and insensibility. And this, what we saw, is creating basically opposition to togetherness, of which you called upon. And this has a lot to do with the global context of violence, of non-possibility to talk. We have two global major conflicts in which I don't see any back channels of conversation or of dialogue, because our conflict in the 90s had this kind of, people, intellectual dissidents meeting. There is none whatsoever communication between Ukrainians or Russians or Israelis and Palestinians at this moment, or I don't see them. This is one context, and the other is within, let's call them European, be it EU or non-EU, as Serbia is, societies. We see, depending on the local context, we have huge social fractures. We have huge break of the social bonds and our social fabrics, which then leads us to the question of all the questions of today's in our democracy, which is issue of trust and security. So this has a lot to do with this. I was 20 years ago a correspondent of our public TV in Belgrade, and the first thing I did there was the assassination of Prime Minister Đinđić. So 21 years later, we have assassination attempt on another prime minister on which we were listening, Grisha, but their politics and their context is on the complete opposite. So Đinđić was trying to defeat these guys, to defeat these narratives, to bring Serbia on the European level, and Fico was now in this global context trying to basically create a society that will come under umbrella of which the guy from the first graffiti called Vladimir Putin is trying to wage upon all of us, which is called war on values. Because this, what we saw here, is a question of values and the question of what kind of education we have and what kind of civic space and civility we have in our European democratic societies. And you cannot do it just with politics, and you cannot do it in old forms and ways. So this is, I think, a very important issue for Europe and globally if we experience on every day what you called culture of violence, or we saw the state violence, or we have global violence, and we have these value wars which target youth. So this is one point I wanted to make. The second point is connected to context of Serbia. Because what happened in 1995, so the end of the war, which ended after the Srebrenica genocide. The point of Srebrenica genocide was of huge importance of the radicalization that we saw materializing at the beginning of 21st century. One side was Islamist terrorism, which fed upon what happened to Muslims in Bosnia. The other was this fundamental Christian crusader thing, Third Jerusalem terror, manifested in 1,500 pages of Anders Behring Breivik manifest called 2083 European Declaration of Independence. And the head of these crusaders was Radovan Karadzic, the other Serb war leader responsible for the Srebrenica genocide. Also, the guy who was driving a car towards the mosque in Christchurch in New Zealand when listening to Serbian war songs celebrating Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic. So this story is a global story. It's not on the front pages of the newspapers, but it creates these deep divisions that are now being basically used by the strategies that are developing somewhere in the Kremlin. So it's not just accidental and, oh my God, Vučić is this and that. This is something that needs to be connected and thought of when we think about our societal changes in European societies. The other part of that is the phenomena of school shooters, which we know started with the Columbine murder. I think I did it last year, but I recommend to all of you to read a fantastic book by Italian philosopher Franco Bifo Berardi. It's called Heroes, Mass Murder and Suicide. And he talks about how these young school shooters are basically, because it's an ideology. And this ideology is manifested, I think the best example of these kids is the 2007 school shooting in Finland. The guy's name was Pekka Erik Auvinen. And he had a t-shirt in which it was written, "Humanity is overrated." And he made a video, as they all did. And basically, you know, Bifo Berardi describes it as self-loathing going global. And they kind of declared, all of them, in one way or the other, war against humanity. And what humanity means to them, this, what Katie was describing, togetherness. Because they were left alone somewhere in north of Finland or in periphery of the United States of America. And the shocking thing that helped them unite was the answer of this right wing we had in politics, from Trump to whatever model you have. So I think we need to think about what Vlada was showing us through these lenses of global processes. And just short reflection for the end, the sentence. When I was a correspondent in Belgrade, I had a colleague and friend who adopted a son. And the kid was like 10 or 11 years old, and he started to have nightmares. Nightmares that his eyes fell out. And they went to the psychologist with him trying to find out whatever. At that, after a certain period of time, I don't know how many, she was reading with him book of Serbian language class. And she saw something that in Serbian literature is called the curse of King of Lazarus, the king who fought in Kosovo, that symbolism that is very important. And that curse, which is written on this Gazimestan monument on Kosovo field, which is symbolically, again, very important for Serbs. It says, who was of Serbian kin and ever in his life didn't come to Kosovo field. Da Bog da mu, how to translate that?
May God. Yeah.
And the first thing is that crows take his eyes out. Eat his eyes out. And that kid, with 10 years old, he read this in his book. And who knows, in kids' psychics what's happening. He was dreaming that crows are picking his eyes out. And from that, they discovered where was the cause of the trauma and start working on that. And in terms of, just to end it, culture of violence and normalization, you have various formats from 2014 Crimea annexation, whereby this global Orthodox pan-Russian connection, Chetniks were brought to Crimea to stand in the main checkpoint leading to Sevastopol to be in international media and show this pan-Orthodox solidarity, to the creation of pop culture, most eclatant Belgrade syndicate rap band, which sings with high emotions. If you don't know what they're talking about, you'll be struck that one day we will return. So thank you, Vlado, for this. I think it's very important, and we need to fight and show that humanity is not overrated, and that we could find some togetherness, be it with the paint or in Cres. Thanks.
Thanks, Ivana. Zoran, it's not Belgrade, it's Skopje. What you are, the streets where you are walking by on a daily basis. However, I do think that some of these things, what Vlada outlined, especially how police is kind of having a blind eye, how there are certain groups of people who are unidentified but still play a role, and it seems that they are somehow also in cooperation with the police and with the state. So I do think that some of these things are not a specialty, neither from Belgrade or Serbia, but we can observe some of these developments throughout the region, and they are being copy-pasted very successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Maybe they're just, taken to extreme in Serbia because of the political establishment in that country. But I would like just first to start that hearing all of this, I'm coming from a country that really did not participate in the Yugoslav war. Mm-hmm. We somehow stayed on the side while the war was raging. Well, at the same time, we had the war in the north, and we had embargo from Greece in the south. So extremely difficult conditions in which the country, started being independent and for the first time reaching decisions on our own. So listening to all of this, I would just say, reading a couple of surveys that looked at young people, I think the last one was done by Friedrich Hebert, like around 60 to 70% of young people in the Balkans want to leave the region. And I think this exemplifies why people want to leave, especially young people. Yeah, we are a post-conflict region because of the war, but young people don't really want to, live this life. Especially with AI and, the access to internet and TikTok and whatever, why they should devote their lives in, listening and, fighting with lunatics in political power. So that's my first point, that people really, young people, this is one of the main reasons why people want to leave. We can say it's European integration, we can say this, but I think that the main reason is internal. They don't have time to deal with these issues when the world is out there and they can freely travel and explore. So yeah, the Western Balkans as such is a post-conflict region, and it faces various forms of violent extremism. This is only one of the extremism, this right wing. We also have an experience also Islamic extremism, when you see how many people have actually went to Iraq and Afghanistan and they returned back, and Syria, and this also has, just fuels even more the kind of extreme behavior when they come back, because the resocialization is not actually working well. We don't have the institutions that can really, kind of re-socialize these people, and again, actually the ones that are fueling this are the ones that should create the conditions and the institutions that should provide this kind of socialization. So what I have seen from the presentation, we are talking about, deeply divided and polarized society. From the bottom to the top. A lot of, denial of what has happened, which provides or is essential for, that actually prevents the society to move forward. And, try this kind of political manipulation about, like talking about we are not a genocidal people. No one really speaks about genocidal people. We are talking about individuals, and Karadzic, which, have done the whole Srebrenica genocide. So you see all this constant manipulation that serves a political cause. It's not about Serbs being, genocidal people. No one is actually saying it. But you see how this actually fuels the political narrative. And then the last picture that you have shown is also, it's quite interesting to observe that it's not only, the countries from former Yugoslavia that looks at it, that also the other neighbors, which are also part of the EU nowadays, also fuel this kind of extremism that is happening in the Balkans. So if we look at the vote in the UN, you will see that Greece abstained on Srebrenica, having in mind how also Greek extremist groups were fighting on Serbian side during the war. And we know that the Bulgarians voted yes, but there was an official letter, Dimo told me yesterday, there was an official letter from the government sent to the UN representative to actually abstain. But the ambassador did, on his behalf, actually went and voted for. So you also see that, also the countries that are more like democratic are part of a bigger society, like the European Union, are actually contributing to this kind of behavior. So most of the people that we have seen on the pictures are kind of hooligan groups connected with sport clubs. And we know that sports is quite strong in Serbia especially. So all of this recruitment kind of procedure is done with the help of first crime, because these people are also used for crime activities. Then it's political connection. Mostly, I guess, people are connected with SNS, so the ruling political party. And then it's also manipulation of youth. This is something that is obvious. Explicit links between the political parties and the most violent ultras or this kind of hooligans are usually concealed, but fans, especially these hooligans, are often considered themselves the frontline soldiers of these nationalistic causes, which dominates politics. And this is obvious. This is not only in Serbia. We have, as you know, the presidential and parliamentary elections were coming in North Macedonia. What we have seen, this kind of murals for the football club Vardar. So this is the main football club in the country. The murals, you know, especially in the center of city, mushroom pretty much everywhere. And then if you connect with what was the actual narrative of the right, of the center right party on the election, is the return of sovereignty that we have lost because of all the you know, compromises that we have done both with Greece and Bulgaria. So you see the connection. You can see the connection there. Another point is that what we are going to see we are seeing now, but I think even more extensively in the future, is that there is a blur line between these hooligans and actually people in high-ranking positions within government. Security system. The entire security system is obviously compromised because obviously there is no police or communal police, for God's sake, to come and, you know, to prevent the hooligans because they are doing it very publicly. But when you appear, in a minute of seconds, they appear. So you see that the entire security apparatus is compromised. And what I can also see is this connection between these people and also private security companies. They're more and more kind of infiltrated within the state apparatus. They're protecting, firstly, they're protecting the state institutions. You see them entering in public-private partnerships with the country, with municipalities on local level. So you have most of these thugs, which are in normal life, they're not doing anything, just like kind of mafia style, extorting money from companies. So if you don't hire that private company to protect your, I don't know, shop, then someone will come and vandalize the shop. Otherwise, you know, so it's better to pay kind of a fee or monthly or whatever. So I think that what we are going to see is this infiltration of more these thugs and hooligans kind of under the mask of private security companies within the political apparatus. We had something like that during Gruevski government. We had the chief of the state intelligence or the police, which at the same time formed a private company that was protecting most of the big shops around the city. So it's nothing new, and it went also across ethnic lines. You know, the Albanians have one that is their company and then protects, and then the Macedonians another one. So I will finish with the presentation. What I'm seeing also is that they're starting to be more incorporated in the system, especially when it comes to critical infrastructure. And I think this is even more scary because these are, you know, when it comes to the resilience of the country, these are the essential institutions that need to be protected from inside, but also from outside. And we have drafted a law. I've seen also some articles from your laws that actually this kind of Stopanska komora. Yeah, the chamber of private security company are actually the one that are organizing the whole issuing of licenses to who can actually protect critical infrastructure in the countries, and they will be the one that will decide, you know, who is the one in charge. So not the state, but the private companies, which we know they're directly kind of aligned with these hooligans, because it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
We have some 10, maximum 15 minutes left for questions, comments. Is there anything? Yes, Juanis, Alida, Oana.
Thanks. Fascinating. Thank you very much. It's all work that I did in the past, and I find this interesting, extremely interesting stuff. One question I have, because obviously for all of us here, I think we more or less all of us are familiar with the recent Yugoslav history. Obviously this is a contemporary last year manifestation of something that's been going on for 40 years, right? And in fact, if you go back in the 80s, this iconography around Kosovo, you know, this archaic religion, this and that, it was actually and it was challenging the official mainstream, which was back then Bratstvo, communism, this and that, and gradually, of course, they merged. In the 90s, of course, the wars, and we know about research that was done by Ivan Chol. Eric Gordy wrote an amazing book about the culture of power in Serbia already a couple of years after the war, he wrote it. So what I'm getting at is the question of what do you see as a qualitative or not different these days about this phenomena? Is it just one on top of the other, these things happening again and again and again? It's just, you know, reinforcing these narratives that have been going on, the marginal, then mainstream, and then dominant already for 40 years? Or you think something today is very different from what we saw in the 80s, 90s? And the second, do I have time for a second question? Obviously, it begs the question of reconciliation, huh? Yeah. I have been among those who criticized this strategy for transitional justice after the war as being too much focusing on judicial and not enough focusing on restorative, memorialization, etc. If you see the memorialization of the war, it's totally ethnic, national, exclusivist. It's actually reinforcing. I did my work mostly in Bosnia. I mean, it's amazing. It's like calling for the next war will happen 20, 30 years down the road. So I wonder if we can reflect about how we can start remembering the war or memorializing the war in a different way, even 30 years after the war. Thanks.
Thank you.
Alida, maybe we can collect the questions and then you answer.
Yeah,
and then
I have a hard time remembering, but I'm already trying to remember the first one.
Okay, he will remind you later on. Yeah. Alida.
There are. Thank you, Vladimir. It was really fascinating. I mean, I was aware of it, also the details, but the way you presented it was really fascinating. Two brief questions. One is about the sort of spillover effect, because I'm traveling to quite a lot of the region, and I think really how you described Serbia is accurate. As soon as you land, you know, everything from newspaper, titles in newspapers, very toxic. And then you have the graffitis and everything else. There are similar things elsewhere. I mean, coming from Bosnia, obviously, I'm aware that, you know, we also have these things. I mean, we're dealing with also with General Mladic on the borderlines that are not necessarily visible to the foreigners, but we very well know where these borders are. But what is do you see any similarities? Do you see that one country I mean, Republika Srpska and Serbia are very well connected, so one is kind of, you know, taking from the other. In many respects, actually, I think Serbia is kind of heading its way on and leveraging, quote unquote, on Bosnian war more even than Republika Srpska at times. But what are the similarities in the region? You know, what are the spillover effects of all this toxicity in the region? And the second question is related to the way forward, really, because it seems to me that these groups are really ahead of us. I mean, they paint, you repaint, they repaint. I mean, it's like there's more on their end that protects them. So how do we go about it? What you do is admirable, but I'm just wondering if there's more to it.
Thank you. Oana?
Thank you. And I think this is going to be more of a rhetorical question because it requires a lengthier answer. It's not just to the panel, I think it's to the room, because something that Zoran said seemed very interesting, which is, I wonder how people see these days the connection in various countries between the state establishment, state institutions, especially the institutions of force, and the far-right and nationalist movements, because in many cases they are either a construct of the state itself, and now the state has lost control of them. In other cases, there's a very, very tight connection, and I think that's just something that merits further exploration. But I mean, it's just something I think is interesting to throw out there. It would require a full debate, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And the final short question from Christoph.
Thank you. Very great presentation. The thing I'm a bit surprised about is that you are sitting here with us in good shape. I mean, even in calm Vienna, the graffiti scene is that actually if you replace a graffiti, you actually look very carefully how many people you bring along with yourself, because it's actually quite risky. And people are beaten up on, you know, but this is mostly completely unpolitical. It's just replacing the... So your game with complete, you know, drawing and redrawing and again and again and again, was there never any kind of violence involved, or do they? I mean, they're also well organized. They have a lot of people. They protect their moral.
Thanks, Christoph. So I suggest you reply now to whatever you remembered as the main issues and questions, and then if there are short reactions or adding something from Ivana and Zoran, then we go back to them.
I'll try. You will be kind to shortly remind me if I forget. Yeah, to return to your first question, I think this, you know, right wing, the ethnic right wing, which is also very paranoid right wing, is very good at certain mechanisms that provide them with platforms where they can actually realize their political goals. I think probably the first one was replacement of factography with emotional truths. We have seen this process happening continuously in a very systematic way ever since the end of the 1990s up until nowadays. So it's been now 25 years altogether, where, you know, around the year 2000, not even the most hardcore Serbian nationalists could deny Srebrenica. They could justify certain things, but they couldn't deny them. Now the denial is all over the place. I mean, and this is why we call them emotional truths. People just speak what they believe, and then they take these things as granted. And this is how it happens. So the power of denial is extremely strong. Also, we have been dealing with regional historians regarding the revisionism, historical revisionism, particularly in school books. And that happens all over the place, in Croatia, Slovenia, Macedonia. Everybody is having their own, you know, narratives which are actually entering the school books. Recently, Dubravka Stojanović, a very renowned historian, has published this fantastic analysis called "The Past is Coming," where she really did this masochistic job of deeply analyzing Serbian textbooks, historical textbooks for primary and secondary school in the last 100 years, and noting all the ideological shifts and changes in narratives that happens from one edition to another. This is enough of a roller coaster to really keep you reeling for forever and ever. Also the mechanisms of auto-victimization and production of enemies is particularly present as well. I think SNS has been extremely expert in doing that. You know, in Serbia that how they so like these unknown groupation, these phantoms, like Druga Serbia, whoever is Druga Serbia, like other Serbia. they use that in order to have this continuous fight against somebody sort of like demon-like and powerful, but not quite visible into society, like Đilasovci. Who are those? Žuti. Do you know what I'm talking about? So they keep producing enemies, and they're fighting this main enemy, which is like this global liberal mainstream. Under which, so they always, their starting position is very victimized, and this is, I think, how this thing has been basically produced at the end of the day. The second one was is a question about memorialization. Again, we have been working very hard within Association Crocodile with different people to see what could be done about that, and it seems that without how would I say it, different acceptance of different narratives, we would not be able to continue further. The memorialization of the wars in the 1990s is very disturbing in Serbia and Belgrade particularly. One particular statue comes to mind that actually evokes the Serbian medieval army, the Serbian army from the First World War, and the Serbian army from the 1990s, which are hailed as the heroes from 3 different periods. And one thing strikes me as really interesting. They are all presented in this very shallow, realistic way, turning their weapons towards us. So it's as if they are actually threatening the actual society that they're supposed to protect. I can't remember now what you have.
She was asking about spillover effect and the way forward, comparing to Bosnia.
Like spillover effect, but in terms of Republika Srpska and Serbia. I can't claim that I follow the region so closely to be able to compare properly. I really do believe that Serbia is by far the worst off, and unfortunately presents the model, the negative model, where nobody should go. I believe that Bosnia is the victim of the Dayton Agreement, and we all know that, and it suffers its own fate and tries to regain the inner stability. It's very hard to do it when you have Republika Srpska included in the context of modern-day Bosnia and Herzegovina. Whereas, you know, there was always a need to compare, for instance, Croatia and Serbia, and Croatia always felt a couple of steps more forward than Serbia, but now the comparison is even tasteless. I mean, you can't compare anymore. Serbia seems to be, I mean, it lost the center completely. It's turning in circles and can't find its way out of its own illusions. Whereas Croatia, together with all, I understand the criticism coming from Croatia regarding, you know, the modern day Croatia, but clearly there is a path, and it has been followed systematically for, you know, some time now. So this is the main difference. So yeah.
Well, maybe if, because we can obviously not go into details about everything, but this last question was very interesting about how it is that you are still here with us and not in a hospital or even in a worse
Yeah, you
state.
have to watch your steps carefully and choose how you do it. We noticed again that these football hooligan groups are not really hiding. You can tell that onlookers and passers-by are either supportive or scared. So both, you know, does not invoke strong reactions towards them, particularly not negative ones, and nothing happens with police or anybody, so they seem to be well protected in the society. We just wake up very early in the morning. And we do things at 5 o'clock when these kids are mostly asleep. Yeah. And then you learn to do things quick. So that's also part of it. We have had several not physical confrontations, but verbal confrontations with passers-by and things like that. And then you also notice that if you don't shy away, so if they throw an insult to you and you reply with an insult, it mostly remains there. So, plus, as much as you don't know who they are, they don't even know who you are. So, yeah, they try to be sort of, they're cautious at the beginning. We have had a really, I refrain from telling that anecdote, but on a Christmas Eve of 2022, we started to completely erase the mural of Ratko Mladic with acetone. And as we started doing that, the taxi driver appeared and he shouted through the windows, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" And then he started beeping. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. And he was driving around in circles and beeping. And we were thinking, oh, just, you know, and continued doing what we were doing. And then the intervention appeared, the riot police. And I'm really, really sorry that I was not in my right mind to switch on my recorder on my telephone, because I should have recorded the kind of speech that we got from this one policeman. There were 3 of them, another 2 were just standing a couple of steps away and kind of basically watching to the ground, so they were not engaging either with us nor with this other guy. But this man, this was a COVID time, and he had a mask on, and he kind of took the mask off, and he said his name, and he said, he pointed to the image of Ratko Mladic and said, "This man is my hero. How dare you do this to my hero on this sacred day," because it was like Christmas Eve. And he said, "I'm going to replace this uniform if I need to go to war in order to fight for these values that I believe in." He was referring to his police uniform. And he was giving us a speech that would at least give him some problems at his work that we unfortunately did not record. And then we understood the atmosphere in certain sectors of the police, which is very supportive of these things, disregarding their duties as policemen.
Yes, well, thank you very much. Apologies to Zoran and Ivana, who will not have now the time to reflect. If there is anything important, of course, during lunch, you can still discuss.
Her, for example, to recognize Kosovo, but yeah.
Thank you very much. I hope you understand that I let Vladimir talk long because he had these very, very descriptive images to show us. So I thought that this is going to be interesting to see. I think we learned at least one thing: what is important for activists: wake up early and be very quick and fast. And the institute you were referring to is the Institute for Chemistry, Technology and Metallurgy.
And
so, yes. So, thank you.